This is Courtney Bro from CPQCC. I am the Associate Director of Quality, and I'm so glad that you're here with us today. We're on the hour, and I think due to our full agenda and our presentation today, we're going to go ahead and start on time. Please mute yourself, and we look forward to seeing your smiling faces in our breakout sessions. So welcome to our 9-month Post-Palooza check-in, where we are turning knowledge into action. And we are going to be talking about leading from where you are, how to recognize, advocate, and mitigate implicit bias. Here's our agenda for today. You can see our topics, and we will go more into detail in terms of introducing our speakers in a few minutes. And please know that today's webinar is approved for 1 contact hour. Our learning objectives here are including that everybody, we hope that you can learn about implicit bias in the NICU. We will introduce the 6 C's of inclusive leadership. We would love to discuss changes you can make as an individual and within your NICU, and we'll have some large group sharing at the end. In order to receive your CE credit, we're going to ask you to sign in. A link will come within the chat, or you can take your phone with your camera and use this QR code to sign in. There's several points of information that we need. It's a spreadsheet, and we'll just need your name, your RN license number, email address, etc. So again, in order to receive CE credit, we need you to sign in, please, and stay for the entire 60-minute webinar. And at the end, we will share the evaluation QR code and the link in the chat. Feel free to ask any questions via the chat. And as a reminder, all attendees are automatically muted upon entry. If you are having any technical difficulties, Kimber Padua is available to assist you, and you can send her a private message via chat, the chat feature in the Zoom. These slides and the webinar recording will be sent out after the webinar, and they will also be posted on our CPQCC website. We will send this to you all post-webinar via email. And then all attendees will randomly be assigned to breakout sessions, and we'll remind you that at that time, we'll ask you to accept the prompt on your screen to join the breakout room. Again, any questions, feel free to submit via the chat and address Kimber Padua. Thank you. And thanks to Kimber for your help. I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Adrienne McIntyre for introductions. Adrienne?
Thank you, Courtney. First, I want to start by acknowledging our planning committee led by Courtney Bro of CPQCC, which includes Tanya Hatfield of the University of California, San Francisco at Mission Bay, myself, Adrienne McIntyre of Kaiser Permanente, Northern California, Rochelle Tsai of Sharp Mary Birch Hospital for Women and Newborns, Anjali Chofla of CPQCC, Ashwani Lakshmanan of Children's Hospital, Los Angeles, and Elizabeth Rogers of University of California, San Francisco at Mission Bay. And this is a powerhouse planning committee and group of facilitators, so we really hope you enjoy your time with us today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rochelle Tsai, and she's going to start by talking to us around leading where you are, recognizing and mitigating implicit bias. Go ahead, Rochelle.
So we'll take the next 10 minutes to recognize and mitigate implicit bias. And so our overall objective for this portion of our talk today is to really just go over how to raise awareness, explore our own personal biases, and foster open, safe dialogue within our NICUs. And I'm hoping that by the end of my short talk here that we'll be able to describe implicit bias and stigma, identify actions aimed to recognize personal bias, identify potential strategies to mitigate those recognized implicit biases, and then also try to end the day today by identifying that one thing that we'll start to do today that can continue our journey towards developing health equity in our NICUs. To know the true reality of yourself, you must be aware not only of your conscious thoughts, but also of your unconscious prejudice, bias, and habits. So when we begin to recognize our implicit bias, we must start here in order to lead effectively from where we are. And once we identify our own implicit biases, we can then move and progress forward by learning from others who may look and think differently than us. And this learning from others will help us to identify and share ideas and experiences that help us to grow as individuals, leaders, and change agents in our units. So in order to identify implicit bias or recognize our own implicit bias, we must understand what that is. An implicit bias is the unconscious or hidden biases that are negative associations that we hold unknowingly and are generally expressed automatically and without conscious awareness. So as we begin to reflect on our implicit bias, we can develop an action plan or roadmap. And I have a simple one laid out here where we start with just increasing awareness and then beginning to reflect on our own implicit biases and encouraging others to do the same. And as we embark on that journey together, we can reflect on existing narratives and languages within our NICUs and then identify gaps and opportunities that we can improve on within our units. And finally, we should engage in active listening and open dialogue to continue moving forward. So when we begin to reflect on our own biases, this may be a difficult journey that we embark on, but we can start by really thinking of our own internal biases and beliefs. And these are often unconscious and may require significant and potentially difficult self-reflection to uncover. Many times we're engaging with others or interacting with patients and families that have varied experiences than our own. And so there's often a lot that we can learn from them as we embark on this journey and reflecting on our own biases. We also need to be open to feedback and observation from others and consider how these biases may be reflected in the care that we provide to our patients and family. This is a journey that requires us to start from where we are and through continual self-reflecting, educating ourselves and learning from others will continue to progress. This is an article that was published in the Advances of Neonatal Nursing in February of last year. And this was a great article that really, in the nursing literature, that really talked about the gaps that exist in our perinatal and neonatal populations and provided strategies to start initiating conversations around those in order to improve our health equity by challenging biases and increasing our diversity. And the article talks about transformative leaders that need to understand the evidence related to these health disparities, understand the social drivers of inequity issues, and identify solutions to influence change. And we can all do this by raising awareness and examining our own implicit biases as we seek to improve care for all of our infants and families. So within that article was this really nice diagram or figure that not only is great to use in opening conversations with others, but it can be used as a self-reflection tool on reflecting on our own biases. And it's a nice diagram or continuum from a fear zone to a growth zone, where we can self-reflect on where we find ourselves fitting into this continuum. And many of us may start in the fear zone, but as we start to self-reflect and learn from others and continue to grow, we will continue to progress along this continuum. And here are just a few additional questions that we can use to reflect upon as we make a commitment to uncovering our own implicit or unconscious biases. How does your experience with race and racism impact you? What are some of the areas in your units that you see bias affecting care or outcomes? And what concepts and actions will you take to impact health equity in your unit? Additionally, I've listed a few tools and instruments here that may be useful in this self-reflection. And the first one I list here is the Project Implicit, which is provided by Harvard. And they're going to put the link there in your chat so you can, it'll take you directly there. But once you get here, there's actually a variety of implicit association tests, and they really give you a nice snapshot in time of what your preferences may be. So for example, the IAT for race actually assesses your preference towards lighter skin or darker skin. And I've taken several of these, and I always find them quite eye-opening and interesting in order to help me to self-reflect. And the other item I have listed here is the Quick Discrimination Index, or QDI. And this is a 30-item Likert scale that was developed and validated in 1995 by Ponteroto and his colleagues. And it assesses sensitivity, awareness, and receptivity to cultural diversity and gender equity. And it's designed to assess subtle racial and gender biases. And it's a self-assessment and inventory. So when it's answered honestly, it can help individuals become more aware of their attitudes and beliefs around racial and gender bias. Stigma, or health-related stigma specifically, is a social process or personal experience that's related to a health condition characterized by the perception of exclusion, rejection, and blame, and contributes to psychological, physical, and social morbidity. And this stigma is giving someone an undesirable label that's based on negative social perceptions. Stigma keeps individuals from reaching their fullest potential. And I really feel that implicit bias really perpetuates the stigma that we may instill within our units or in just our everyday lives. And so that they are a little bit intertwined. And so it's important to uncover the implicit bias and then also look at the stigma that exists to help mitigate those simultaneously. So stigma leads to feelings of shame and unworthiness for those that experience the stigma, and this can ultimately result in social isolation, poor quality of life, less access to healthcare, delayed diagnoses, reduced adherence to treatments, and illness and death. And many times people don't even realize that their words and actions can be stigmatizing. So we can work to reflect on our existing language and narrative, specifically around stigma. And this link here, Beyond Labels, at marchofdimes.org, they have several tools here specifically related to stigma, and I highly recommend going and reviewing what's on that website. And this was a nice video that I have here. We don't have the time to watch it, but if you go to the site, you can take a look at it. And it really talks about how our words impact others and how they can be stigmatizing. So I've added a few questions here on how we can reflect on existing narratives in our units as well as stigma. How can you use your language to model for your NICU team? How can you address stigma and develop a counter narrative? What are your health equity goals, including both short and long term? And how do these goals fit into the larger narrative of health equity? So this definitely lends itself to being evaluated through QI methodology, and we can start by identifying specific gaps and examining biases that may exist in our NICUs so that we can try and identify why certain disparities persist. And our implicit bias may in fact perpetuate these health disparities. And we can use a targeted, culturally competent care model that is highly effective in addressing some of these issues and hopefully bridging those gaps. We can create equity metrics for our QI projects. So many of the projects we're already working on in our units can easily be stratified by race to help uncover some of the disparities that exist, both in our process measures as well as in our outcome measures. And I believe moving forward, as both researchers and clinicians, we really have an obligation to leverage the data that we have at our fingertips to really going beyond more than just a description of our demographic data, but really using that to effectively develop strategic interventions that will actualize improvement for our marginalized infants and families. And I'll go ahead and end here before I pass it off to Tanya. But I think we really need to start working on advocating and engaging in active listening and open dialogue to help move forward and learn from all the unique aspects that our team members provide by first finding our inner voice and helping others to find theirs, creating safe and open spaces to raise this awareness, dialogue, and collaborate with one another, be open to feedback and self-reflection, and seek to understand differing perspectives from our own. And I think maintaining a consistent message is important as we're sharing and building relationships and finding opportunities to work together with other teams and units who are working on similar goals. So I'm gonna go ahead and end there and pass it on to Tanya Hatfield, who will give you a brief introduction of the 6 C's of inclusive leadership.
Thanks, Rochelle. That was wonderful. And thank you to everyone for offering your suggestions of additional resources. So I'm going to be talking about the 6 signature traits, or the 6 C's of inclusive leadership. So these were described after surveying thousands of global leaders and employees on what their perceptions of inclusion were. The research revealed that people felt if they were treated fairly, that their uniqueness was appreciated, and that they had a sense of belonging, and that their voice was important in decision-making, that then they felt included. So essentially, inclusive leadership is all about treating groups and people fairly, that is based on their unique characteristics rather than on stereotypes. Personalizing individuals, so understanding and valuing that uniqueness, while also recognizing and accepting diverse people as part of a group, and then leveraging the thinking of that diverse group. So the first C is courage. So this is not just acting fearlessly, but acting in spite of any fear we may have. Courage includes gently challenging others to help them see how their behaviors impact others. And then inclusive leaders dare to speak up for change, even when it's the challenging thing to do, and they honestly admit their own limitations. Cognition of bias, which Rochelle did a wonderful job of going over, and we've all knowingly or unknowingly observed, participated in, or been a victim of bias. And this could be in-group favoritism or simply preferring those that are more similar to us. Inclusive leaders don't just know their biases, but they're consistently looking for their own blind spots. They're deeply aware that biases can narrow their field of vision and prevent them from making objective decisions. Curiosity is having an open mindset. It's seeking out and having a hunger for diverse perspectives. And then it's active listening and showing empathy for how others experience the world. Cultural intelligence is understanding that both cultural differences and similarities are important. Inclusive leaders recognize how their own culture affects their perspective and how cultural stereotypes can influence their expectations of others. They also demonstrate cultural humility, learning from different points of views, and seeking contributions from others to overcome their own limitations. This also includes recognizing that different cultural situations may require our own behavioral adaptation. Collaboration. Well, collaboration with similar people is comfortable and easy, and collaboration with diverse others creates its own unique challenges, but it also creates unique opportunities. Inclusive leaders empower individuals as well as create and leverage the thinking of diverse groups. At its core, collaboration is working together. It's appreciating that the sum of all is better than one. And the last C is commitment. Pursuing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives is a long and challenging road. It requires a lot of time, energy, and allocation of resources. Highly inclusive leaders are committed to championing these challenges and have aligned their own personal values with the value system of the organization that is inspiring them to make this change in fairness and respect and resources within their organization. So from now, we're going to move on to our breakout sessions, which we've grouped into these 3 different groups of Cs. You're going to be randomized to a different group. We will not be recording these sessions as we want to give everyone a safe and confidential space to share. Along with open sharing, we want you to focus on answering these 2 questions. So what is one thing that you can do to change yourself individually? And what is one thing that you can take back to your organization? And we do ask for a volunteer to be identified that can report back some of the things that your group has learned. So you will, perfect, get an opportunity to join that breakout room.
Thank you, Tanya. Please accept the prompt on your screen. We're so glad to see you back. We hope you had a good time in your breakout session. Thanks to the leaders for taking time to be with us today and sharing your experiences and your expertise with everybody. So I'm going to get back to our slide set here and turn it over to Adrian. And for about the next 14 minutes, we're going to have an opportunity to hear from folks. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. I hope you all enjoyed your breakout session as much as I did. We're going to start by asking the breakout session that Courtney and I were leading, the Courage and Cultural Intelligence, if we have a member that'd be willing to speak up. We would love to hear just one thing you think your NICU could do, or you could do, excuse me, starting on Monday. I don't know if Gina is still with us, but Gina had a really, or Lisa, excuse me, Lisa had a very practical next step, and I was hoping she could share.
We talked about things that we could do on Monday, and one thing that I mentioned was participating and taking some of those quizzes that were shared on the chat to look at our own biases that we may not realize that we have. So taking some of those quizzes and then ultimately sharing those with others in the NICU and the staff to just kind of get people to just do some, thinking about some things that they might not have realized that they have implicit bias or some biases.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for that. I thought that was really practical. We have these great tools and resources that Rochelle was sharing, and there was others in the chat sharing additional tools. And if you can carve out some time, even as early as Monday, take those and just see where you're at in terms of your biases. How about the collaboration and commitment group? Do you have a speaker, and what would you do starting as early as Monday?
We were so busy talking that we forgot to elect a speaker. So if anyone else wants to jump in, but I will otherwise just say that I think what was really inspiring with our group was talking about how to build collaboration, whether that's through bedside rounds with families, multidisciplinary rounds, sort of trying to really take into account the perspectives of all of our team members and our families as really the most critical team member. And I think one thing you could do on Monday, particularly as the leaders of those teams, as we think about inclusive leadership, is to start asking the question, like how, really trying to learn about the experience of your coworkers and of your families that you're caring for. So Amanda from Cedars talked about a great project that they have done where they asked their families how they felt, particularly their Black families, how they felt about the treatment they received, their experience. And then that was shared with the medical team and really started increasing awareness of the potential variations or disparate care that's provided to Black families. And at least, Amanda, you can correct me if some of that is wrong, but you can start doing that now. Like, how are you feeling your care is? What else can I do for you? Is there anything that I could do differently to help your experience in the nursery? And I feel like if we do that as leaders, whether it's the nursing leader at the bedside or the attending on rounds, really just asking the question about confronting, racism specifically or discrimination in care. We could do that Monday. We can put it into rounds, which I think is a great idea.
Elizabeth, I just want to add to that, starting the DEI with new hires, having a session about DEI. And we've started that at Children's Hospital and the NICU. So whenever we have new hires, I'll be part of introduction to the DEI and our brave space.
And I see Amanda on the screen. Amanda, was there anything you wanted to add about, what you're promoting in your NICU? It sounds amazing.
So we partnered with the March of Dimes for this project, and we actually took that information that we learned from our families about the care we are providing, and we created kind of a safe space for a session in our skills lab that happens annually with our nurses, and we shared the raw feedback from our families, what was great and what wasn't so great. And it was very eye-opening, and it helps our team kind of identify their own implicit biases and be more aware of them. So in the future, they're providing equitable care to all the families, and we are, just doing the best we can with all of our families. So it was really helpful.
I love that. I love that. And we want to hear also from the Curiosity and Cognizance group. Do we have someone to speak up from that group?
Yes, so I was going to share what our group discussed. We discussed a lot of examples where implicit bias had come into play, and what emerged from that was that it might be very helpful to start doing a root cause analysis after these events as a team to really dig in a little bit deeper as to what biases may have influenced whatever the event is that occurred. So that was a practice that people felt was important to bring back to their NICUs.
It's great, an element of debriefing that it layers in this sort of implicit bias impact, so to speak, on that event. I love that. Let's go to the next question. I thought we had a second question, maybe? No? Okay.
So yeah, you know what I did is I kind of combined it. So I think you did this perfectly, Adrienne.
No
right.
problem.
So personally or as a group, how can this, you transfer this learning from today and you act on it. And I think that you all in your groups it sounds fabulous. Your discussions and your actionable ways to move forward is beautiful. And I thank you for sharing. And any other thoughts from anybody? I'm going to just open this up. We have a few minutes. Otherwise, we can move on and close out. So anybody else have any thoughts, ideas, comments? Wonderful. Thank you. Oh.
Courtney, can I say a couple of things?
Please.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's Rohit Kasi. I just wanted to emphasize again what I wrote in the chat, that you really have to be explicit about issues of equity and issues of implicit bias in your unit. The time's already up. it's been going on for too long that we have not paid due respect to issues of equity. Now if you would keep it behind the curtains, the issues will not get resolved. So one of the discussions I do with my team is to choose equity as your fourth vital sign, really during the rounds. I personally, in my own practice, I don't even hesitate asking parents that are we meeting your unique needs as a family? What are we not doing? What questions are we not asking you? And you'll be surprised by the responses that you get from these parents. I'll just leave with this last statement, which I absolutely love, is that if you're not actively including, you're excluding. So if you're not actively doing that with your patients or families or staff, you're probably missing out on many viewpoints, and the issues will remain in the unit. Thank you.
That was
Thank you,
beautifully
Rohit.
said. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you for sharing. You're always so wise, and we appreciate all that you do for your NICU and being a role model throughout the state. Dr. Passy, thank you so much. Any other thoughts? I'm just checking the chat right now. Okay, everybody loved that from Rohit. That's beautiful. And I think with that, if there's no other comments, we're going to close this section out. And we've got some really great information that we want to share with you all. And Ashwini Lakshmanan, I'm going to turn it over to Ashwini, who is the chair of our PQIP Education Committee. And Ashwini, take it away.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Again, first off, just wanted to express my gratitude to the planning committee for today. It was really just a very insightful webinar. So thank you for taking the lead. Adrian, Rochelle, Tanya, Courtney, Liz, thank you so much. It was really, really amazing. So we just wanted to share with you what's coming up for us, which is our Improvement Palooza 2022, sponsored by CPQCC. And this year, we're very excited that the topic is Families as the Foundation of High Quality Inclusive NICU Care. Normally this conference before the pandemic was held in Coronado near San Diego. This year, due to multiple reasons and multiple factors, we are fully virtual this year. We just made the decision this week, and we're very committed to this. I think in some ways, given the topic, it's going to be really, really sort of the best way to go to be most inclusive for our families as well. So we wanted to share with you the date. It's going to be March 4th, which is about 6 weeks from now. And we will share with you the registration information for that as well. Next slide. Just wanted to share with you the agenda. I think given the topic of discussion in our breakout room, I think a lot of this hopefully will be appealing to you or colleagues. We have invited some wonderful speakers. We start off the morning with a keynote session by Sarah DiGregorio, who is a well-known journalist and author. We have a great family panel session led by Jen Canvasser, who leads the Next Society. We then have these really interesting family-centered lightning sessions where you can take a deep dive into various topics, and we'll share those with you, and you have an opportunity to join 2 of them. Meg Parker then from Boston will be presenting around social determinants of health and perinatal care. We'll have a brief break for CPQCC updates and QI awards, and I will put in a plug to please nominate anyone that you know who would be eligible for one of our quality improvement awards, and Janine will share that in the chat. After a break for lunch, we'll come back and have Mary Coughlin present on trauma-informed care in the NICU. And then Winona Valentine and Meredith Merchant will present on cultural humility in perinatal care. And then Priscilla Joe and Catherine Ponder will present highlights from Project COM and Project Console. And then we'll have a panel discussion around those topics, followed by our CPQCC success stories. So we're really hopeful that you all will be able to join. These are some of our lightning session topics this year. It's a wide range from successful and safe discharges to family-centered care pilots. Liz Rogers will present on our new NeoBrain collaborative. Then we have some opportunities to take deep dives into QI topics, such as driver diagrams and vignettes. We'll also share about QI fundamentals and our CPQCC report sites. And then Sarah DiGregorio and Jen Canvasser have been kind enough to present a session on connecting with NICU families. We have a new one, a new area of interest for our education committee this year, where we'll be presenting a session for trainees and hospitalists on engaging with CPQCC. And of course, Susan Hintz and Erica Gray have been kind enough to present on our high-risk infant follow-up program. So we're hopeful you'll be able to join these sessions, and you'll be able to indicate at registration which ones you're interested in. This is our esteemed faculty for this year. And next slide, Courtney. And then again, just a plug, please nominate someone today who's made exemplary contributions to neonatal quality improvement. We want to highlight these achievements and just be proud of our colleagues. So please consider nominating a colleague. And I will defer to Courtney on, again, obtaining the CE credit. So thank you for the few minutes, Courtney.
Thank you, Ashwini, for all the updates. And just a note with the Improvement Palooza, we're encouraging you to recruit your families. And each NICU, right now, we're going to cap it at 25, and we'd like you to include your family, maybe a key family that has done work with you in your NICU around family-centered care, and those families can attend for free. So look for more information around that, but we'd love to have them join, as we have a huge panel of parents that will be sharing their stories and experiences with you all. So back to the credits. We encourage you to please sign in if you haven't already. The link is in the chat, or use your smartphone on the QR code. And then the next step is to complete the evaluation. Upon completion, we will be in touch in the next 4 to 6 weeks in terms of the credit and distributing those. So at this time, I want to thank our speakers. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts at CPQCC for your leadership today. I want to thank the attendees. Thank you for being here and for stepping up and making a difference in your NICUs. We are here for you, and we are by your side. So good luck, and we can't wait to hopefully connect with you at Improvement Palooza. Take care, everybody.